Now, we've had a couple of callers who have been waiting for a while. We've got, let's go to them and give them a chance to weigh in on this. We were talking about the family. We got a first call is from Bob in Michigan. He wanted to talk about the family. Bob?
Thanks for taking my call. Enjoying your show today, guys. Sounds really great.
Oh, thank you.
And you've had other people call in and talk about the relationship of the political structure and how it enslaves people. But people keep saying, well, how can they do that with the children? Impose a gag order, tell them what medical care they'll get. I can't state this enough. You've had some other people that have really articulated it very well as to why. But you have to remember that the people that are in power see us as chattel goods, possessions, slaves, if you will, and whatever is good for that property, they are maintaining that as a corporate asset.
Yes, yes.
I mean, that's the common thread through this whole thing. And, you know, the great late George Carlin said it, they own you.
Yeah. Exactly, because they own you with your student loan debt. They own you with your mortgage. They own you any kind of way they can.
Give you that stupid number, and that's what this is. We're talking about the result of a basic misclassification, criminally, I might say, and put us all into that really risky, dangerous place.
Yes, yeah, and you know, that's a mindset that people need to understand. They need to understand that this is not coming about because the government is fundamentally incompetent or they waste money or they really want to do the right thing. But no, they're basically, they have a very evil agenda. That's why we keep trying to put this out. We see this over and over again. And topic after topic, it isn't incompetence. It isn't mistakes being made.
They always try to play that off, just like, you know, you have the situations of Benghazi, you have the situations of the ATF running guns into Mexico. And they say, oh, it was a few rogue agents, even though the Eric Holder has perjured himself. He knew about it. He may have known about it under another name, but he knew these activities were going on. But they always try to plead incompetence. I have too many moving parts in my government. Well, why don't you shut down those moving parts when you find out they're acting the way they're not supposed to?
Yes, yeah. Fast and Furious, for example, the good example that you bring up there, that was not incompetence. That was a deliberate effort to destroy the Second Amendment. It was to manufacture a false flag so they could enact gun control and gun registration so they could prevent gun traveling over the border.
And you know, they still, even though that Fast and Furious incident was exposed, they still try to use it because Obama goes down to Mexico and he says, the reason why you guys have such a high murder rate with your weapons is because we have a First Amendment in our country.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, even the
Second Amendment.
Yeah, even the New York Times pointed out that it was a false flag in order to do that. And they had the UN Armed Trade Treaty, which was going to do precisely that. So they have something in mind that they want to enact, and so they create a false flag that's going to move public opinion just in time for the event to come in, but it fortunately blew up in their face and was exposed only because a federal agent was killed. Let's go to, thank you, Bob, for the call about the family. Let's go to D.C. and West Virginia. D.C., you said you got a Washington Times article you want to talk about?
Hey, what's going on, guys? Great job, like always. Sorry if I'm a little off topic, but I want to talk about the banker suicide, also known as murder. And I wanted to see if you all see any connection between this Washington Times 2012, October 25th article. Now, this was put out right during the whole hysteria of the Mayan calendar and all that stuff. But basically, they quoted Paul Volcker. And for those who don't know Paul Volcker, he's in the Trilateral Commission. He's also in the Bilderberg Group. And they quoted him as saying that he believes the economies will collapse on March 4th, 2014. And then all of a sudden, we have all these banker suicides.
Yeah, that's true. Looks like it's time.
You have so many different predictions. You know, I'm not the greatest forecaster, but I definitely do recognize the banker's suicides or quote suicides, very mysterious circumstances going on with that, and it definitely does concern me.
When you got somebody who's a former chair of the Fed like Paul Volcker, if they predict a date, I mean, certainly they could manipulate the markets to the extent that they could precipitate a crash.
I
mean,
prophecy.
We have the Federal Reserve because you had J.P. Morgan facilitate a crash and use that as an excuse to create the Federal Reserve. Thank you, D.C. Let's go to John in Ohio. You want to talk about the Ukraine?
Yeah, I wanted to first point out that the media that everyone considers their friend in their car in their living room is really a cobra. It is not your friend. It's run by the Central Intelligence Agency, the biggest banks that own it and are locked with it, the Fortune 100 companies, the warmongering military-industrial war profiteers.
And that was even more confirmed with the FCC regulations that have been revealed recently.
I'm not detailed on that, but that general statement I just made, I think, necessitates we get real alternative. And I found one, which is Global Research. It's a collection of a lot of writers and journalists who will never get on CNN and Fox, and they've been talking about the lies we're being told on Global Research concerning, well, just about everywhere, including the Ukraine. And I wanted to bring up some of the incestuous relationships between Victoria Nuland, this notorious foul-mouthed imperialist. Her husband is the neocon founder of the Hitlerian Project for a New American Century, Robert Kagan. And he also interlocks with the Republican warmongers because he is the top advisor to Mitt Romney, an even worse warmonger than Obama, which is hard to imagine. And so you see that there, and you see that this Project for a New American Century, I think a lot of people know, was the scheme of the top military-industrial types and Democrats and Republicans to overthrow the entire world and establish U.S. World domination. They said because of the demise of the Soviet Union, this was a golden opportunity, that they were going to eliminate and destroy any country that stood in the way of U.S. imperialist world domination. Then you look at Samantha Power, the other warmonger. She is the wife of Cass Sunstein, who is the evil demon that, along with the military, that are creating sock puppets to plant, pro-war propaganda, pro-overthrow of Syria, Libya, Ukraine propaganda throughout the media, while pretending to be alternative. And so I think when you look at all of that from all sides, and I think the InfoWars on some of its positions is exposing the military CIA industrial propaganda, like in Ukraine, Syria, and Libya. But on the other hand, it promotes that propaganda when it comes to China and Cuba, Venezuela, and sometimes even Iran. But I think people have really got to realize that.
How do you think we promote how do you think we promote propaganda? Did you see the interview that I had with Steve Pachinik on the Nightly News the other night?
No, I don't follow.
Well, do you know who Steve Pachinik is?
Oh, sure I do. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just for people who don't know, I mean, he was advisor to, I think it was 5 administrations. He brokered the Camp David agreement. He's got long-term involvement in the intelligence community. But I asked him about the Ukraine. I asked him about Victoria Nuland, and he said it was the most outrageous, in-your-face, deliberate challenge that he's ever seen. The fact that she's claiming that they hacked her phone, and the phony outrage from the State Department and the U.S. government that somebody would actually listen to her phone. I mean, can they really seriously say that with a straight face? I mean, they're listening to all of our phones, blanket surveillance, dragnet surveillance, and yet they say, can you imagine the Russians listening to somebody at the State Department's phone? Of course, she did that just to challenge them, just to foment dangerous relationships, to escalate conflict between the U.S. and the Russians. I think is part of a way for the military-industrial complex to get back their profit center. But how do you think that we are promoting propaganda? Let me ask you to explain that.
Well, I'm saying on certain countries you're doing a good job, like on the Ukraine and Libya and Syria, and pointing out that al-Qaeda is really behind these claims of Anderson Cooper and other CIA rotters that these are freedom fighters. But when it comes to China, Cuba, Venezuela, I think you don't apply the same standards of these color revolutions, the CIA subversion, and the lies that we're being told simply because they're either nominally socialist or they're semi-socialist, and there's a kind of a red flag that goes up that changes the whole standards when it comes to those countries. But
we have talked about Venezuela. We've talked about how there seems to be a double standard in the way that it's very telling how there's a double standard between the way I
believe it was Kurt Nimmo who put out an article just a few days ago, sir. Maybe you can go to Infowars.com and check up on that for yourself.
Yeah. Well, right. I just I just think that, like today, talking about applying the same standards to a country. If Russia came over here and tried and overthrew Canada and started to move its missiles into a threatening position in our country, and
oh yeah. How about if they put missiles in Cuba? Would we see that as a crisis? I think we have. You know, and quite honestly, I mean, I look at the situation in Ukraine, and I have a lot of sympathy for the people of Ukraine. I know they've suffered under tremendous despotism. I know that the Soviet Union went in, they decapitated their leadership, they co-opted the churches, they had a massive influx of Russians to immigration to control the country, and then they took away their food and they starved them out. And so I understand that people are still upset about that. They should be upset about that. But we also understand there's another gang that's out there eager to subjugate them. I hope they get their independence somehow, but you know, they're jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire if they get under the control of these European bankers and the IMF. We said that was happening, and now we see it, as we talked about with Paul Joseph Watson last hour. The IMF is there with, they're going to outbid the Russians. Instead of $15 billion, the IMF is going to come in with $35 billion, and they're going to loot the country left and right. It's just really sad. Well, thanks, John, for calling in from Ohio. We've got Brad in Connecticut. You wanted to talk about Sandy Hook.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Hey, Brad. Sure. Go ahead.
I just wanted to bring up a couple inconsistencies and some weird things that I found from doing my own research about whatever went on in Sandy Hook. There is the evidence pictures that you can see online, and there is two black sweatshirts. One's by the front passenger, and the other's by the rear passenger that are just left on the ground, and they never really talk about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of anomalies. I mean, the article, the interview that Wolfgang Halbig had with American Free Press, it was a 45-minute long interview. Adon Salazar, not Paul Joseph Watson, but Adon Salazar, did a detailed argument talking about, he kind of focused on the crime scene because that's his investigation background. He's a former state trooper. He's a school security consultant. So there's a lot of strange things that are going on in the periphery of that. It's very strange that you don't have any families that have sued. That's never happened before in a shooting. Yeah, that there's never been any families that sued. It was interesting that you did have one family that was going to sue, and they were going to sue for $100 million because, not because their daughter was killed, but because she was frightened. And they backed off of that after just 2 weeks, and nobody has sued them for negligence. And of course, that's the first thing that seems to happen. And if they were concerned about children's safety, you would think that they would be open to school safety consultants like Wolfgang Halbig. So we want to get him back on. His amazing set of facts. He's been researching this since it happened, in spite of the stonewalling from Connecticut. And we've had him on the nightly news. We want to have him on the radio soon, and we hope that that'll happen. But today he had a family emergency. So our prayers go out to him.
Symbols are powerful, and the globalists have hijacked the symbols of America. They've turned them into their own symbols. Well, we are restoring the idea of the true republic, not the counterfeit globalist empire, by promoting the icon George Washington and others. That's why we're rolling out an 100% made in America line of incredible pro-liberty apparel. We are repopularizing liberty. We are helping fellow Americans rediscover what made this country great. We are the spirit of 1776. We are 1776 worldwide. We are all brothers and sisters in arms in the animating contest of liberty in the long march towards humanity's ultimate destiny of freedom. Visit madein1776.com today and vote with your dollars to promote truly made in America, high-quality products, and promote the ideals of liberty.
We're taking your calls, talking about news articles today. We've been talking about the attack on the family farm, what's going on in the Ukraine. What does that mean for not just the Ukrainian people, but what does it mean for us as we see the American government escalating this conflict between
in there and all the war hawks and everybody's ready to go.
Oh yeah, I mean, you start going after the Ukraine and Russia, and you start going after the Crimea, which is their access to water, that's going to be a very
call in last week talking about the ports out there, and that's a very real concern.
Yeah, that's a good way to stir up a hornet's nest. If you wanted to start World War III, that's the way you would do it. And we've seen a lot of signs, and we've heard warnings from people like Skousen saying that that's exactly what he thinks the government wants to do, is start World War III. We know that governments always profit when there's a war or there's a fear of a war.
Oh, exactly.
So the question is, do they just want to drum up conflict between us and Russia and China and Iran? Certainly that's in the interest of dictatorships like Iran and countries where you've got an oligarchy that's running it, like China. It certainly makes them stronger to brag about how they want to go to war and how prepared they are for war. But, of course, our government is becoming more and more like a dictatorship in every respect, so you would expect them to start doing that.
The situation in Syria where, Obama says they crossed the red line, and then he says, the American people say they crossed the red line. Then they show the videos of these YouTube videos with the Al-Qaeda logo on it, show it on the big networks. You see, it's Assad. I'm like, well, Assad with the Al-Qaeda logo on his video. Like, okay, that makes perfect sense.
That's right. I guess we're not really too far away from the day when the U.S. military is going to parade down the streets of Washington on May Day. Of course, they're already sending out the military vehicles to every village and town. We've got anti-mine vehicles that are going to every village and town. So I guess they don't need the May Day parade anymore. Right?
I think it's Ohio State. They have that big mine-proof truck.
Yeah.
I'm like, what kind of frat parties are you guys busting up that you need something that big?
Yeah,
that's my question.
That's right. Well, let's go to our callers. We had one caller from Texas, Timmy from Texas, who's been on for a while, hanging on for a while. You wanted to say something about pension fraud?
Yeah, I read an article. It was posted yesterday on Drudge. That it was only there for yesterday, but it's over. It was from Yahoo News, and it said that over 100 firefighters and policemen are being arrested for pension fraud from stemming from the 9/11 pensions they got. I guess they retired shortly after 9/11. And I just wanted to discuss with you guys if there may, you guys might think there'd be a deeper plot as far as these are the guys that just kept quiet and took the money, but in reality they could be the guys to speak out and say there was maybe proof of explosives, and instead they took the money, which in the article states is over $400 million. So spread that out over 100 people or so. I mean, that's a lot of money. What do you guys think?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean,
I have to look into that.
Frankly, I wouldn't be surprised to find anything associated with the 9/11 situation, but we know how the government has used it. We've covered it over and over again. Alex has talked to eyewitnesses. We have done documentaries. We've covered the news. It's just amazing, and we see it happening over and over again. I mean, what do you think about the fact that Rachel Maddow and MSNBC and CNN are talking about how phony the Boston bombing looks, having issues with the fact that the FBI would pick somebody up for questioning and then shoot him in the back of the head, or shoot him 6 times and once in the back of the head? I mean, just before the break, we had a caller asking us what we thought about the pension fraud story, if we thought it might possibly be related to the 9/11, what we believe is a conspiracy there. But I asked him a question. I wanted to know what he thought about Rachel Maddow at MSNBC starting to talk now about the FBI assassinating a witness in the Boston bombing, and CNN actually questioning the government's official story.
Yeah, I was shocked.
Typically, they're the ones who put out the government's official story. I mean, it was amazing when the Boston bombing was happening. We would question details of the narrative, and a half hour later, it's almost like CNN was responding. It was kind of surreal. Yeah, it was pretty surreal. But they were the spokespersons for what was going on with the Boston bombing, and now, I guess, to try to bolster their credibility, they're questioning it. What do you make of that, caller? Timmy in Texas? Yeah.
David, it's like you say, every day on y'all's introductions, they're on the run. We got them on the run. The InfoWars is defeating the dinosaur media. One more thing on that previous story I covered, Victoria Cavalier with Reuters is who wrote that story, Jakari. You said you'd want to look into it. It's just, when big corporate bankers violate or have some sort of fraud against them, there's a hearing on it. They're not arrested immediately, and there's over 100 firefighters and policemen that have been arrested. So it just seems really sketchy, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And one last thing, guys, I got to meet y'all there at the Alamo. Jakari, you were wandering around lost trying to find the march, and I ran into you with a buddy of mine. So It's good to meet you guys. David, I had mentioned to you about the Secret Service agent swabbing his children for some odd reason. I don't know if you remember that conversation.
Yeah.
But it's good to talk to you guys. And remember, the guy I was with, Jakari, his name's Sean, and he's super trendy.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Well, thanks, Timmy, and thanks for showing up at the Alamo. We have to stand up for our freedoms or we lose them, and it's very, very important for us to stand on the freedoms that the government recognizes. They recognize so few, and when it's legal to open carry a rifle and the police are harassing people for that because they want to make the public, they've gone on record, Eric Holder has said that he wants to brainwash the public. They want everyone to be afraid not only of the sight of guns, but the sight of someone with a gun.
Joe Biden. And I'm glad the caller brought that up, the Alamo, because everybody asks, we go out here, we fight every day, we get on the show every day. What progress is being made? That's progress going out to the Alamo, because we had a police chief who said he was going to arrest anybody who came out there with a gun. You had 1,000+ people show up with guns. That's a victory. When the food babe comes on here and says Subway needs to take this stuff out of the food, that's a victory. When you have the Hernandez family in San Antonio, Texas, saying that we're not going to wear your RFID tags, they fight it out. Catherine Albrecht gets involved. They win. That's a victory. Victories happen every day, but you don't see this on your mainstream network, so people just think we're just banging our head against the wall. And occasionally, we knock a hole through that wall, bust through it, and get the bad guys out of there. It can happen, but you have to be persistent. You can't give up and just be encouraged and keep going at it.
That's right. You got Rachel Maddow, who's gone from laughing at Alex Jones and making up all kinds of bizarre accusations about, he's just questioning the government's official story. Now she's questioning the government's official story. That's a huge turnaround. Let's go to Jerry in Ohio. He said you wanted to talk about farmers and the New World Order. Jerry?
Yeah, how you doing? I'm a long-time listener, and I think you guys have been doing a wonderful job. I just wanted to get that out to you.
Thank you.
You guys are excellent watchmen. You're letting people know what's happening and what to expect. And I was just wanting to let you know, I've been living in northeastern Ohio for most of my life, and it's looking more and more like I'm living in communist China. They are pressuring the farmers up here. They are building housing allotments right next to farms, and then people are complaining that they can smell the cows, they can hear chickens, they can hear pigs. They're really just trying to crowd the farmers out.
Just before the break, we were talking to Jerry in Ohio. We were talking about farmers, and I asked him to hang on over the break. We've got this article from the LA Times talking about planned food safety rules attacking organic farmers. Listen to what they said. They interviewed a guy, his name is Jim Crawford. He's an organic farmer, and he said that the FDA came to him and said, this is my badge, these are the fines, this is what's hanging over your head, and we want you to know that. Just pure intimidation. What are they intimidating them about? Well, they're intimidating them over using natural fertilizer. What we call manure. And it's being pushed by, of course, big agri, big corporations. It's also being pushed by NGOs like the Center for Science and the Public Interest. They're pushing the FDA not to yield to these family farmers, but to shut them down. This is the last statement he had to say. And then I want to get Jerry in Ohio's comments on this. This is what Jim Crawford, the guy that they talked to, said. He said, the public loves to love and idealize us little family farmers, but the vast majority of us are hanging by a thread. Now the government is saying, we're going to put a lot more weight on that thread. What do you think about that, Jerry in Ohio?
Yeah, like I was telling you, they have these township people, and they drive around, and they're like little mini Nazis. If you have a compost bin, if you don't go to get a permit to have one, they come out and they take pictures of it, and they
the Green Police. The Green Police, like, what's that Audi commercial?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. It says creating an America that is filled with snoops. Oh, in so many different ways, we see America turning into East Germany. I talked to William Binney, who was the technical director globally of the NSA until he resigned right after 9/11 because he saw the government violating the restrictions that had been put on them about foreign intelligence surveillance, that they were to keep it foreign. He was somebody who has spent his entire life watching people watching the government in the Soviet Union, watching the government in East Germany, and he said that we are becoming exactly like them. We're going down that path, and it's not just the government spying on people, but it's the citizens who got this
culture.
Exactly. That's what they did in East Germany. It was getting the citizens to report on each other. Now, of course, they've got the technology, and it makes it even worse, but it's just creating this snitch mentality, which is what you're talking about, Jerry.
And also here in Northeast Ohio, they're putting in like these little mini highways through all these small towns, and they're cutting back all the trees, and they're putting in all these cameras. What I was told was that when the uprisings begin and when the cities are burning, that the military are actually going to use the small towns surrounding these big cities to set up command posts.
Yeah.
And also, I've seen some FEMA places also popping up here.
Well, we know that they're training for insurgency within the United States. That's why they just spent $100 million on a fake U.S. city that's more detailed than they've ever done with any of their urban warfare.
And the bullets and the targets of little children, the targets of pregnant women. It's all coming home, and they got cameras all over. They got 40-plus downtown Austin. They need more. They're saying if we had more cameras, we wouldn't have fights, like the viral video, even though there's a camera right where the video was taking place.
Well, they don't like you taking pictures of them, though.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And we just reported on the nightly news that Cisco is competing with IBM in order to create a physical information highway. They're actually going to, you've heard of the Internet of Things. That's where they're connecting our appliances, everything, to the Internet, which, as Petraeus told us a couple of years ago, is going to go.
Dishwasher.
Exactly. So it's going to feed right to us. Well, now they want to do that with the roads. They want the roads to, quote unquote, provide you internet and social media contact. But then, of course, they're also going to have tracking. They're going to, of every aspect of your life, they're going to look at your license plate. They're going to have that in a database. So even after Paul Joseph Watson exposed the fact that, or it was Kid, I forget which one of our writers found the story, but they saw an RFP from the Department of Homeland Security to create a license database, a car license database.
Exactly.
And then that went viral, and within a couple of days, DHS, Homeland Security said, no, we're withdrawing that.
We're withdrawing that, but we have something worse.
Yeah, exactly. And yet at the same time, you see in the tech world, you see these reports that IBM and Cisco are competing against each other as to who's going to provide the physical information highway that's going to collect all this information, all this data on you, just in the name of, we're going to make it easy for you. We're going to let you have internet all the time in your car. You're going to be able to watch it.
When you go to these cities, these downtown centers, and they say they have the free Wi-Fi, they can spy on you while you're using their thing. And I'm talking about the license plate scanners. Now they have police cruisers. I guess they've had them for a while that can read your license plate. They're just driving around scanning everybody, violating your Fourth Amendment. They have no reason, no probable cause to search you. Also, the red light cameras can do this as well.
Yeah, and they want you to be able to surf the internet and tell them what you're thinking while you're driving along in your driverless car.
Yes.
Okay, which you no longer have control over that anymore either. Let's go to Tony in Idaho. You wanted to talk about the family? We were talking about that earlier, Tony?
Yeah, good to talk to you guys. I heard Glenn Beck when he was talking about the little girl that what all they had doing to her. I hadn't heard that they had put her in foster care, though. What the government does is they're manipulating the law to kind of justify themselves to do a lot of this stuff, and they do it through registration. The people they bring the people up in the schools, and the people aren't taught the law. They don't know what the government's doing or how the government's manipulating the law. But basically, when you allow your baby to be registered with a birth certificate, you're registering that child to the government. And once you do that, then the maxim of law says the source of the right determines the governing law. So when you register it to the government, then they take it. They just take it. They have a right to do anything they want.
Exactly. And when you talk about the school system, this whole generation, I guess it happens generation to generation, they'll rob you of some type of practical knowledge like we see now in our current military. They're not teaching these young guys about the Bill of Rights. They're not teaching people about constitutional rights. They're
teaching them just the opposite. They're actively opposing it.
They don't want you to know this stuff. So when you come out and into the streets to do whatever duties you have to do, you don't know. You're not conscious of these things, and it happens generation to generation. Just with our current system, there's not going to be a generation who doesn't understand or who hasn't been fed this propaganda that, you know, guns are bad and anybody with a gun is just going to jump out the bushes to kill you, or they're not aware that, you know, there wasn't a time where you didn't have to get a pat down just to get on an airplane or to go see the Super Bowl. This is the conditioning that we see. You're growing up a whole generation in things, and it gets worse generations.
It's normalcy bias. It's the Stockholm syndrome. You know, when I went to school, there weren't any policemen in the schools. We didn't have metal detectors. We didn't have school lockdown. We didn't have any of that stuff. Today, the kids are being raised in a model of a police state. You know, I've said it over and over again, maximum security is actually a prison. Okay, that's what they call a prison.
We see, just like I was talking about earlier in San Antonio, with the RFID trackers at the high schools down there, it's prisoner training. You give the kids the little ID badge, so they have to wear visibly all the time. You stand in this line, you do this, you can't go here without this permission. You have to ask permission to go to the water fountain, just like you do in jail. You know, I used to work in the jail. That's how it worked.
Yeah. If you value security over everything else, you're going to get maximum security, which is a panopticon prison where everything you do is watched. You live your life in this fishbowl that the government superanalyzes everything that you do. In many cases, will jump to the wrong conclusion, make you the enemy. That's what we're coming up to. Thanks, Tony. Let's go to Bregan in Wisconsin. Bregan.
Hey, guys. David, sorry, my speakerphone was on. David, thank you for continuing to pursue the story with Wolfgang. I really appreciate that, and our hopes and prayers are with him.
Yes. And for those people who haven't heard, Wolfgang Halbig is a former state trooper, former educator, a school security consultant who started investigating Sandy Hook because that's what he does. He looks at school security. They want to tell you that all these gun regulations are to keep the children safe, but they don't want school security experts to know anything about the crime scene. And after cover-up after cover-up, after 10 months of trying to get FOIA information, they started threatening him. They started pushing back against him. So we've had him on the Nightly News. We wanted to get him on today, but he had a family emergency. Go ahead, Bregan.
And I have a few questions for Wolfgang, but I'll save that for when he gets back on the show. But one of the primary questions would be, where is all that video? I mean,
that's the question since day one.
Yes.
Yeah, they've exploited all that video from Columbine and every other school shooting and every other, mass murder event. And why won't they use it this time? Well, a lot of people suspect that maybe there is no video showing that very fact. And anyway, thanks again for pursuing Wolfgang, and our thoughts and prayers are with him. I hope he's doing okay.
Well, thank you, Bregan, and thank you for helping us up there in Wisconsin. You've been involved with the raw milk trials that have taken place up there, and you brought Wolfgang to at least my attention. I think the writers found him, but thank you so much for your help and following with us. Let's go to Scott in Texas. Scott.
I want to talk to you, ask you questions really about foreign troops. I know Alex covers this quite a bit on the show. Got some questions first. How many troops are there?
I don't have an exact number, but we've seen various drills. I believe they had one in Miami 1 or 2 years ago. They had troops from all over the world. I even think there's a few Japanese personnel there as well, running the troops, running the drills where they had to rescue the mayor or the.
Yeah, it fluctuates. They'll bring them in for drills. Sometimes they'll bring them in for training. I know we've got an Australian general who is over some U.S. troops right now. I mean, it's pretty amazing the involvement that we have with that. But
you are watching the best of the Alex Jones Show, weekdays from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central. Watch live at Infowars.com/show or become a member of InfoWarsNews.com and help us take resistance to the next level.